In this video, I'm going to show you how to get incredible sounding pop drums, just like the ones that you hear on the radio. Check this out. Okay, so the starting point for a drum sound like this is the drums themselves. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I'm a massive advocate for getting the sound right at source. My philosophy is record as if there's no mixing, mix as if there's no mastering. So we're going right in and we're focusing on the drum sound that we want for the song right at the very start. Now this is very much a pop song in the style of Lewis Capaldi, Ed Sheeran, those sorts of like male solo artists. And for this, we don't want a drum sound that's too live. We want a sort of short drum sound. So nothing too live, a room sound of around 1 second maximum. That's what we're looking for. Now, the starting point for these drums was actually Superior Drummer 3. And if you're interested in learning how to make programmed drums like those sound as realistic as possible and exactly like a human has played them, then you should check out my other video first. That will be linked somewhere around this video right now. However, I'll give you a very quick rundown of what these drums were, because it wasn't a preset kit. I've kind of like customized it and put some different parts together. I've got the track sheet here and I'll quickly read through it. So the kick is a 24-inch Gretsch round badge kick. We've got the in, out and the sub mic from that. The snare is a 14-inch Lignum custom snare. We've got a top and a bottom mic on that. The toms are Yamaha custom. Those are multed down to just a stereo track. The drums, it was like a John Bonham style kit. So we've got 1 rack tom, 2 floor toms, so 3 in total, but then that is reduced to a stereo pair. And then it's a mixture of paste and Zildjian K cymbals. Now we also have a couple of samples as well. This is the first one here, so a kick room sample. This is actually from Stephen Slate drums, SSD5. From the CLA expansion, we've got 2 24-inch kick samples, but it's the room tracks that we've boosted. So this is a room kick. And then there are 2 snares. Again, these are from Stephen Slate Drums 5. We've got the ART snare. The reason that I chose that one is because it's got a very deep, low tuning sound with tons of low end. It's very dry and just kind of works for this song. And again, a snare room sample. So this is the ART snare, but with the room mics boosted, just to give some ambience. Nothing too long, nothing too live, but just some nice short ambience. So that's the drums. We're now in the mix session and I want to focus your attention on what I would say is probably like 80 to 90% of the overall drum sound, and that is the overheads in the room. So a lot of people use overheads as cymbal mics, and that could not be further from what I'm trying to achieve with the overheads. I want the overheads to give as full a picture of the drums as I possibly can. I want to hear the kick, nice thump from the kick. I want the snare snapping in the center. Yes, we want the cymbals, but I want an overall picture of the kit. Same goes with the room tracks. The rooms are not just there to obliterate with compression, they're there to add size and space to the drums. So probably about 70 to 80% of the drum sound is coming from the overheads and rooms. In fact, let's just play a section of those now. Check these out. So already that is a pretty decent drum sound, and it is just coming from essentially 4 microphones, 2 overheads, 2 rooms. Once we start putting the spot mics in, the close kick, the snares, the toms, that's just going to make things sharper, more pointy and more punchy. We're using the close mics almost to supplement the overhead and the rooms. Now, another thing that I'm absolutely not going to do with the drums is obliterate them with compression. Let's just run through some of these tracks now. So the overhead has got 0 compression, just EQ, just some top, some bottom EQ. Start compressing the overheads. All you're going to do is just bring out all of the cymbals and make it sound really washed out. Don't want that. The room tracks have a little bit of compression. If we just play those, it's not much though. less than 3 dB, just kind of focusing the sound in a little bit, just bringing a little snap out from the snare. The kicks, so the kick in mic, this is where all of the top end of the kick is coming from. Again, you can see no compression, just top end EQ. The kick out mic, again, no compression, just EQ. The big thing here is taking out a big chunk of low mids. It's what I call the cardboard boxy frequency. It's around 500, 498, taking all of that out on a tight cue. That just focuses the kick drum, gets rid of that boxiness. The sub, that's just there for low end. We'll go to the kick room, and again, no compression, just EQ. We're just boosting a ton of top end just to get some air from that kick. Take a listen. Onto the snare, we might have we've got a little bit of compression on the snare top. Again, not a lot though. Less than 3 dB. The snare has got a ton of low end boosted because we want the snare to sound fat. We don't want to chop all of that low end, cut all of that low end away from the snare because you're just going to make it sound thin, and we're then going to start relying on the samples, which yes, we do have those, but let's get the sound right at source. There's some gorgeous low end on that snare that was part of the drum kit, so let's use it. The snare room, this one's a little bit unique, so it does have a lot of compression. We're smashing probably way past the 10 dB mark if I remember correctly. However, you notice that the mix knob is way down. We're only blending in about 20% of that compressed sound, so there's a little bit of parallel compression going on here. So that's just a really nice ambient snare sound that we can blend in as we need. Toms, no compression. Hat, no compression, just EQ. Now, where we are compressing the drums is on a parallel track. If I open this group here, this is my parallel drum track here. It's called the Crusher, and we have some interesting stuff going on here. This is a track that I'm usually blending in and out. It just so happens that in this song, it's just there all of the time. It sounded great. I didn't feel like there was any part where I wanted to drop this out, so it's on all of the time. We've got Slate's Bomber plugin. This is kind of like EQ and compression in one box. It sounds really great, particularly on this tight preset. It just makes the drums sound super pointy and super punchy, particularly when you push the input past the 0 slightly into the red. A little bit of EQ, just a bit of top, bit of bottom, and then we're using the FG Grey, which is an SSL style compressor, 4:1 ratio, slowish attack, auto release, and we're getting a ton of compression, about 10 dB, and then this track is just being blended in with the rest of the drums. So let's take a listen to what that sounds like. We're going to start with it out, and then I'll keep putting it on and off so you can hear the difference. So to really hear the benefit, you will need to be listening on studio monitors or decent headphones, but to me, that is not such a subtle change. When that parallel track is out, the drums lose a ton of punch. The snare and the kick go a bit more sort of like woolly, and they're back in the mix. As soon as that track comes back in, the snare has got some point to it, the kick has got some point to it, and they just come forwards. And that's what I'm using this for. So that is pretty much the only compression that I'm using on the drums. And on some tracks, I will use that as a fader. I'll ride it where I want some punch from the drums. This one, it's in all of the time. Now, there's also some other magic happening on the drums with the FX. I like to use reverbs on drums, and I've got a bunch of different reverbs set up that I'm routing the drums to. However, the key here is that I'm not routing close mic drums to reverbs. I'm not routing the kick in, the kick out, the close mic snares. Sometimes maybe I might put the close mic toms, but not usually. What I'm actually doing is sending the room tracks. So this stereo room from the drums, that's going to the verbs. I'm also sending this snare room sample. Remember, this is the really ambient room snare sample. So those are the only two tracks that are going to these reverbs. The reason that I'm doing that is because I want to extend the room. I want to emphasize the room more. To me, there's a very big difference to putting a reverb on a close mic snare. That's not a sound that I like. However, if we run the rooms through a reverb, we then extend that room and we have a little bit more control over the EQ of it and the size of the space and where it is in the mix. So these are the verbs that we've got set up. They're essentially just a bunch of different short room reverbs. The reason that I'm using different rooms is because they offer different flavors. So the first one is this Sony reverb. I'm using Verb Suite Classics just because it's got loads of different units all in one box, which is great. So this is from a Sony 2000. It's a short room, just over half a second. And we're EQing a little bit into that as well. We've got a ton of high shelf. I want this to be really bright. So this is my bright room. We're then going into this one here, which is a Bricasti. And I've got it on the marble foyer setting. It's just a second. This just sounds a little bit different. It's a little bit darker. It has some thicker low mids. We then jump down. There's a percussion plate here. There's just the tambourine going through that. And then finally, we have the RMX. This is my gated reverb. So it's on the non-linear setting. And again, just less than half a second on the decay time. And this just makes the snare sound really, really big, but then it gets out of the way. It's the gated reverb sound that we all know and love from the 80s. Let's take a listen to what those sound like individually. So I'm going to start with the drums playing on their own. Let's take all of these reverbs out and I will put them in one at a time. Let's take a listen. So the Sony reverb is adding some nice high end. It's adding some air. You can kind of hear that, particularly on the snare. Sounds great. Let's listen to the M7. Put that in a second. That's just extending some of those lows. It's thickening the low mids. That's why I like that reverb. And then finally, let's take a listen to the RMX. The snare just comes alive with that one. It sounds really, really good. Let's put all of those in together now. And take them out. It's just not as exciting. Those reverbs really, really add a lot to the drum sound. Now, the final thing to get your drums exactly where you want them in the mix is automation. As it turns out, I don't have a ton of automation on this track. However, I have all of my drums routed through this group here, just called drums. There's nothing on it. That is just one fader with all of the drums going to it. So I need to turn the drums up. That's one fader. What I did do is some automation on individual subgroups, however. So all of the kicks are routed to a VCA. In the intro, we don't need the kick to be really loud because it's literally just a piano. So we're automating the kick. If we need to automate the snare, we have those routed to a VCA as well. We didn't need to do that in this song. It sounded great where it was. The tambourine is also getting some automation just between the sparse sections and the more dense sections. But automate those drums. Ride them up in the chorus, pull them down in the verses, drop the parallel out if it's a little bit too much in the verses or in another section of the song. Just ride that and put some dynamics into your drums. Don't over compress them and experiment with reverbs. That is the key here. Now, if you would like some free drum samples, I created some incredible sounding kick and snare drum samples that you can download completely free and use them in your sessions right now. These are from an SJC drum kit. It's one of the nicest drum kits I've ever had the pleasure of recording in one of the nicest studios and live rooms that I've ever had the pleasure of working in as well. It was a nice big live room with high ceilings. We had some incredible microphones on there and some incredible equipment that they were all recorded through. So they sound amazing and they're going to make your production sound even better as well. The kick and snares are at all different velocities, and you've also got the close mics as well as the ambience mics as well. So we have samples with the overheads, which were a vintage pair of 414s, and also rooms where we used a pair of Royer 121s and also a mono U47. They just sound amazing. They're ready to drop into your session as soon as you download them, and they'll sound incredible. They're really versatile. No matter what music it is you're producing, recording or mixing, whether it's pop like this one, whether it's rock, even country or punk music, you're going to find a use for these. They sound amazing. The link is in the description below. Check them out.